custody who has information about a terrorist plot, about harming innocents, and you can get that information by torturing them. I mean, aren't there situations where torture is necessary?
No.
And how reliable is that information?
Absolutely not, and that's one of the main things to address that argument with. There has never been a documented instance of this so-called ticking time bomb scenario. It's completely unrealistic. First of all, if you torture somebody, they're going to say whatever they think you want to hear to get you to stop. You know, you mentioned the movie Rendition, and that's what happened in that case. The gentleman finally told them the names of the people that were on his soccer team when he was a kid, and it you know, did terrible things to his own spirit to do that, because he knew that he was opening those people up to similar kidnapping, rendition, and torture, and those were people that he had cared about when he was young. But you know, he had to say something. He was innocent. He didn't know anybody who was a potential terrorist, and so he came up with the names of people he'd played soccer with. And I mean, you know,
just make up what
that's
what's not there.
yeah, that's the kind of thing that's going to happen.
Better to be safe than sorry? Let's just say 90% of those suspects are innocent. They have nothing or no information of value. But what about the 10% who do know something?
That's kind of
Isn't it worth it to save lives, possibly?
What kind of person are we making ourselves by doing that? I mean, that's the bottom line. You know,
we're going to kill 100 to make sure that we got one. I mean, that's cannibals do that, sick people do that, criminal serial killers do that, not nations and governments. At least they're not supposed to do that. And what you were talking about, reliable information, I remember I was raised a Catholic, and every day we have to go to confession. And I just didn't have anything to say. So when I get to the confessional, I start making up stuff because, you know, it satisfied my requirement. The priest was happy. I went away and said my Hail Marys and everything was good. So I think, you know, the same thing. When you don't have something to say and you're that far from dying, or you cannot stand the pain, if it was me, I'm going to tell you anything you want to know. Anything you want to know. It may not be true, but this is what I'm going to say because this is what you want to hear. So how valuable is this information? It's not valuable. You're pressing on someone to say something that isn't real. And even those who have given comments and made statements and pled guilty under torture circumstances, how can we ever really say that what they said was true? That they didn't say what they did just so they would get some relief? We shouldn't be forcing people in that position to get some relief. Punishment comes after you are convicted of a crime, not to convict you of a crime. I mean, the whole thing is backwards, and it's sick, and it's demeaning. You know, it's demeaning to the concept of democracy.
So what ways would you suggest we get information from suspected terrorists or people involved in plots to harm innocents? I mean, how just questioning them nicely?
Yeah, well, we've been fortunate to host a former FBI agent who was responsible, in fact, for tracking down somebody who randomly shot some people outside CIA headquarters in Langley, Virginia, tracked him down in Pakistan. And his report, as well as other FBI interrogators, is you've got to relate to the person on their terms to make an interrogation effective. And in the black sites, some of the first complaints were coming from experienced interrogators, FBI interrogators, people whose job it is to solve crimes. And they were saying, what you're doing here is counterproductive. So most of the expert testimony suggests that it is totally counterproductive. I try not to harp on that, though, because I agree with Khalila that the moral issue is the more important item. We can't respect ourselves if we allow that to happen.
Isn't there a fear, though, that terrorists out there who know that, hey, from now on, the U.S. is not going to use any violence or torture methods to extract information from suspects, well, I just don't have to say anything if I get caught.
Yeah, but aren't we creating terrorism by torturing?
That was my response too.
I think we're creating people all over the world that hate America. They're saying Americans are hypocrites. Their government, democracy is hypocrisy because we're doing these things. I think that if we have to appeal to people's moral conscience, and they will give information. I think if I knew someone was going to be blown up, I would tell to save those people's lives because it's the right thing to do. I don't think that by torturing them, they're going to get anywhere by solving the problems of people that want to create terrorist acts. And those people that are creating terrorist acts, they have their own agenda anyway. It's not the ordinary man that's working in some shop in Germany. He's not doing anything. And you can't just do that to him because you suspect him of something. It's wrong. It's just wrong. And people, they don't respect us and they don't have any confidence in the government, and particularly the CIA. Who is policing the CIA? Obviously, the administration wasn't policing the CIA. Bush was the president. He wasn't policing the CIA. They had carte blanche on everything they did. And this is the problem. We have to have an organized government here that one is watching the other part of it so that these things don't happen. A part of the government, the CIA, shouldn't be like Rambos, allowed to go all over the world, do whatever they want to anybody, because it's going to backfire. It's going to backfire on Americans, innocent Americans.
We'll talk about Guantanamo and prisons in a little bit, but I mean, there are both sides of the argument. I'm just trying to play devil's advocate a little bit. What about the so-called non-torture method of waterboarding? What is waterboarding?
It's torture.
You put a bag over someone's head and you put them basically upside down. You dip them in water till they feel like they are actually drowning. I can't even imagine anything more horrible than that.
What about the argument that they were saying that this is not really torture? And we have a video about waterboarding that we'll show in just a minute. But what about the argument that this is really not torture? Well,
my recollection is that U.S. servicemen have been convicted of torture for using the waterboard. I believe the U.S. also convicted Japanese adversaries of torture for waterboarding. I can't remember the specifics, but I know that the U.S. has been involved in prosecuting waterboarding as torture.
So it is kind of legally now.
It's torture.
It's torture.
Yeah.
All right, we have a video about this.
It's annoying to me now to read every time it's discussed in the press or in Congress that it simulates the feeling of drowning. It doesn't simulate the feeling of drowning. You are being drowned slowly. There are people who are sort of former or current SEER, that stands for Survive, Evade, Resist, Escape program, in which these horrible techniques and others are taught. And there are quite a lot of these people who are now in, so to say, private practice.
Enjoy the music. Let you go when it's 15. Yeah. 15 on, 15 off. Third time through, if he hasn't done it, we'll get a 15 off, 30 on. We'll do 15 twice.